Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave.
On behalf of every father and every mother.
Wings for freedom. On behalf of our warriors.
And paves the way for a new history.
Hello and welcome to Tochnyi Weekly, the show that gets behind the headlines to discuss the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine. We have an excellent broadcast for you today. First, I will be presenting the major news items that have occurred this week. That'll be followed by a quick presentation from our Kyiv correspondent, Bionade, presenting us some news from Kyiv. That'll be followed by the report for the German aid to Ukraine. Then our contributor Vassal will discuss a recent ruling by the European Court of Human Rights. That'll be followed by a report on the connection of the Baltic countries' power grid to Ukraine. And finally, we'll wrap up with a discussion with Andrew Perpetua about some developments on the front line. So I will start with the news without any further delay. Ukrainian forces targeted and hit a Russian ammunition depot in Crimea, which is currently under occupation. Air Force Commander Mykola Oleschuk shared on Telegram, as reported by Ukrinform, that despite claims by enemy propaganda that Ukrainian aircraft had been destroyed, these aircraft are actively engaged in combat operations. I think they mean drone there. They continue to execute missile and bomb attacks on the positions of occupiers and successfully targeted significant military installations in the enemy's territory. On July 1st, Ukrainian pilots carried out a significant strike on the ammunition facility in Crimea. In the Zaporizhia region, near the occupied area of Melitopol, the Security Service of Ukraine's military counterintelligence successfully destroyed a Russian Nebo SVU radar. The event was captured on video and shared on the Telegram social network by journalist Mikhailo Tkach. The radar was located using a Shark unmanned aerial vehicle, a system funded by Tkach and the NGO BON. Tkach explained that the Shark drone traveled 70 kilometers to adjust the targeting of a missile and ensure that the warhead precisely struck the radar. Tkach reported that the radar was targeted by a HIMARS, and the Cyber Boroshno telegram pinpointed the radar's location. They successfully geolocated it near the village of Kalinivka in the Zaporizhia region at specific coordinates. The incident adds to a series of successful strikes against Nebo radars, including a Nebo M near Luhansk, which was destroyed in May, and one in Kursk, which was targeted in November of 2023. Additionally, in September, they also took out a Nebo U radar. The Nebo radar family originated from the Soviet era and subsequently was developed further and upgraded by the Russian military industry. It's designed to detect and track a wide range of air targets, including aircraft, cruise and ballistic missiles, and other stealthy threats in the air at significant distances and altitudes. The Tambov gunpowder factory was also targeted once more by attack drones. Russian media released footage of the latest assault. On the morning of July 4th, 2 drones aimed at the factory were reportedly intercepted and destroyed by air defense systems, according to Russian sources. However, contradicting the official report, a video from a local resident captured one of the drones striking an area within the factory grounds. The footage showed a smoke plume rising from the impact site, suggesting a possible fire, and the sound of gunfire was audible in the background. As of now, specific details about the exact point of impact or the consequences of the strike have not yet been disclosed. Previously, the facility experienced significant incidents, including an explosion on June 20th that resulted in 4 fatalities, and earlier in the year, on January 19th, the plant faced a similar drone attack. Drone strikes targeted Russian oil infrastructure also in Krasnodar Krai, leading to fires at 2 oil depots and damaging a cellular tower. The incidents occurred overnight on July 6th, as reported by the local authorities and Telegram channels. The operational headquarters of Krasnodar Krai confirmed that unmanned aerial vehicles struck facilities across 3 districts, Yeysk, Leningradsky, and Pavlovsky. In Pavlovskaya Stanitsa, fuel tanks at an oil depot reportedly caught fire due to debris from a downed drone. A similar scenario occurred in Leningradskaya, where a fuel tank caught fire following a UAV attack. In Yeysk, despite Russian air defense reportedly shooting down several drones, falling debris caused minor damage to the cellular communication tower, and the headquarters reported no casualties from the incidents. The videos circulating on Astra show significant fires burning at the old depots, which you're looking at now. Colonel Serhiy Yermenko, commander of the Ukrainian Air Force's 96th Anti-Aircraft Missile Brigade, has confirmed the successful interception of all Russian Kinzhal ballistic hypersonic missiles aimed at Kyiv since the introduction of the Patriot air defense system. Previously, Russia had touted the Kinzhal missile as the new generation of weapons that were considered uninterceptable or unstoppable. Yermenko reported that since Patriot systems have become operational, Russia has launched over 20 Kinzhal missiles towards Kyiv, all of which were effectively neutralized. While these missiles have consistently targeted Kyiv, they've been intercepted. Kinzhals directed at other areas outside of Kyiv have in fact reached their target successfully. In other words, we can only say that Patriot has intercepted every hypersonic missile that has targeted Kyiv specifically. The recent decline in missile attacks on Kyiv may not necessarily reflect the effectiveness of the air defenses. Yermenko suggested that Russia might be reallocating its focus on other targets for other reasons. Nevertheless, he assured that Ukrainian defense forces remain vigilant and ready to respond to any potential threats at any time. He also addressed the challenge posed by Russia's guided aerial bombs, which are a big problem for Ukrainian forces on the front line. Yermenko emphasized that destroying the carrier aircraft of the bombs remains the most effective countermeasure against them. While Ukraine has the capability to shoot down the aircraft, there is an ongoing need, according to him, for more weapons and anti-aircraft missiles to bolster defensive efforts. Oleksandr Syrskyi, the commander-in-chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, has highlighted several key challenges and strategic initiatives in a recent statement following a week-long review in the Eastern direction. He noted that one of the primary issues for commanders at all levels is recruiting units that are comprised of motivated and well-trained military personnel. So I just wanted to mention that, Zelensky's comments this week got a lot of airtime, which were basically that there's sort of 14, I think the kind of way that the media sphere has digested what Zelensky said, I don't know if it's necessarily an accurate conception of it, but basically he said something to the effect of there are 14 brigades kind of sitting around waiting for Western weapons. And I don't know. I think that I'm not sure, I've seen some disagreement about that, I'll put it that way. And I just wanted to point out that Syrskyi this week mentioned that there is still a major shortage of recruiting units at all levels for motivated and well-trained soldiers. I'm hearing some clicky clicks. Someone could mute themselves. So I just wanted to bring up this report from Syrskyi. So basically, Syrskyi was asked what the biggest challenge for the army is right now, and that was what he mentioned: well-trained military personnel who are motivated. He also addressed the need for modern electronic warfare and air defense systems that can effectively counter UAVs. And he mentioned, in terms of Ukraine's main strength right now, he said that the superiority and quality of air power, and I think specifically because he mentioned bombers and FPV drones, I think he's talking about drone pilots, along with the high skill of their operators, which he credits as crucial to Ukraine's success and the safety of its troops. He also mentioned that they've been implementing improvements to the tactical medicine system and integrating it with the medical forces structure. And there's expected to provide significant enhancements to the efficiency of medical care on the front line. And he highlighted the importance of basic training and integrating all these new guys from the mobilization. And lastly, he mentioned plans for another meeting with commanders of UAV units to share experiences and discuss the advancement of doctrines around UAVs. So I think it's a pretty, well-rounded report. I think the main thing for me is that discussion about personnel still being an issue. So up next, topic of procurement. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has announced a significant new security assistance package for Ukraine valued at $2.3 billion US. The announcement was made during a meeting at the Pentagon with Ukraine Defense Minister Rustem Umerov and was reported by the Associated Press. This latest aid package includes anti-tank weapons, interceptors, and various munitions tailored for Patriot and other air defense systems, addressing critical shortages as Ukraine continues to defend against Russia's aggression. The final support is structured with $150 million allocated from the PDA, or Presidential Drawdown Authority, with remaining funds supplied through the Ukraine Security Assistance Fund, Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, USAI. These resources are intended to bolster Ukraine's defenses. Also, Secretary Blinken was speaking at the Brookings Institution this week and indicated that further announcements regarding additional air defense systems for Ukraine could be expected prior to an upcoming NATO summit, which will happen next week, in the upcoming week, which aligns with ongoing international efforts to support Ukraine. This is like sort of breaking news, or very recent, like right before the stream started, that the UK announced a new Secretary of Defense. Wish I had his name in front of me. I don't, but great guy, seems. His very first act as, I think, Secretary of Defense. That might not be the right term for the UK guy, sorry. But the point is, the very first thing he did was he arrived in Odessa for Ukraine's Navy Day, and he participated in ceremonies there, and he announced a new UK aid package, which I don't have the specifics in front of me again, but they are available. We'll maybe throw the link up somewhere at some point. And just like a lot of good stuff in there in terms of the specifics. So, John Healey is the name of the new defense secretary. So thank you, chat. So just that's a little bit of breaking news. UK announced a new aid package for Ukraine. They have a new Secretary of Defense, and he's in Ukraine right now talking about his new sweet aid package. So great stuff. Up next is MedInvest, which is a company that has initiated the production of additional protection kits for American M2 Bradleys as part of their Steel Front project. These are sort of anti-drone cages, as far as I understand. The new initiative aims to enhance the survivability of armored vehicles, particularly the Bradley, by safeguarding their most vulnerable points against drone attacks. The company highlighted that modern American combat vehicles, such as the Bradley, have not previously been designed specifically with drone attacks in mind, which renders them susceptible to certain threats. The Steel Front project is aimed at extending protective measures to the Bradley and other military vehicles, including T-64 and T-72s, as well as the American Abrams tanks. The protective screens are crafted from steel produced by MedInvest, with the manufacturing of each set taking around 2 to 10 days. Following the production, the kits undergo rigorous testing at a testing ground, and feedback from the military has been gathered. If the evaluations are positive, the mass production of specific kits are green-lit. On the M1, these protective structures are comprehensive and cover the turret, engine compartment, and any potential entry points for drones, which can otherwise immobilize the tank or disrupt the turret operations. Despite extensive coverage, the total additional weight of the shields on the Abrams doesn't exceed 430 kilograms, ensuring that the vehicle's functionality and operational capabilities are not compromised. The Ukrainian government has adopted a resolution that enables the procurement of domestically produced drones through Ukraine's ProZorro forum. ProZorro serves as a public electronic procurement platform in Ukraine, where state and municipal entities can post tenders for various goods, services, and projects, which allows businesses to transparently bid to become official suppliers to the government. Mikhailo Fedorov, the Minister of Digital Transformation, emphasized that this move facilitates equal opportunities for drone manufacturers to secure government contracts. He described the integration of drone procurement into the ProZorro system as a logical step towards transparency, aiming to enhance the efficiency of acquiring drones. Under the new system, any government buyer in need of drones can place a detailed announcement on ProZorro specifying the desired characteristics of the drones. Interested suppliers can then access information about deadlines, delivery locations, and other relevant procurement details. An auction is conducted following this, where the supplier offering the most advantageous terms wins the contract. This procurement approach aligns with the Ukrainian government's broader strategy to utilize the ProZorro forum for transparent and efficient purchasing practices. Previously, the ministry announced plans to use the ProZorro market to procure timber needed for constructing fortifications, a decision that was influenced by public criticisms regarding Ukraine's preparedness following a Russian offensive in Kharkiv Oblast on May 10th. PSJC Ukronafta has initiated drilling of a new exploration well in western Ukraine, which was disclosed by the company's director, Serhiy Koretsky, in a Facebook post. The well aims to reach a depth of around 2,750 meters and is expected to tap into a productive menolite deposit. Koretsky highlighted that the drilling operations are being conducted with Ukronafta's own equipment and personnel, and the anticipated initial output from the well is around 16 tons per day. They're planning the construction of 2 additional wells in the eastern part of the country, which are projected to produce collectively over 100 tons of oil daily. The wells are around the depth of 4.5 kilometers. Ukronafta is Ukraine's largest oil producer and manages a national network of gas stations as well. In March 2024, the company expanded its own operations by taking over the management of the company Glusko's assets, bringing the total number of stations that it operates to 545. The company has also been updating the format of its gas stations and resumed operations across its network. And the company is owned by Naftogaz Ukraine, which holds a 50% share of the company, or a stake in the company. And that company, as far as I understand, is run by the Ministry of Defense as of the conditions of the war. So the company shares of the company previously held by private owners were transferred to state control, and now the company is managed by the Ministry of Defense. Like, that's my interpretation of that phrase. Up next, we have foreign relations diplomacy stuff. President Zelensky recently spoke with the newly appointed UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer via phone. During their conversation, Zelensky congratulated Starmer on his electoral win and expressed his hopes for the new government to meet the expectations of the British people. Zelensky shared that Starmer reaffirmed the UK's steadfast and principled support for Ukraine, and they also aligned their strategies in anticipation of an upcoming NATO summit in Washington and other significant international gatherings expected this month. Additionally, they discussed ways to deepen their bilateral relationship, including crafting a groundbreaking 100-year partnership agreement between Ukraine and the UK. President Volodymyr Zelensky also met with Ukrainian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, and the two have decided to collaborate on drafting a decree aimed at resolving bilateral issues. Following their meeting in Kyiv on July 2nd, as covered by European Pravda, both leaders emphasized that their discussions marked a significant step towards addressing long-standing issues between the two countries. Zelensky noted that their comprehensive dialogue could lay the groundwork for a future bilateral document that would guide the relationship between Ukraine and Hungary, reflecting a reciprocal approach in their interactions. Orban expressed optimism about the talks, suggesting that they moved Hungary and Ukraine closer to finalizing an agreement. He mentioned his goal to normalize relations through a comprehensive cooperation agreement with Ukraine, akin to those Hungary has with other neighbors. Furthermore, Orban highlighted Hungary's commitment to assisting Ukraine's economic modernization and pledged to support during its EU Council presidency, during Hungary's EU Council presidency, promising extensive help to Ukraine during the period. Also, if I remember, he also this week called Ukraine the most corrupt country ever and said we're not integrating them into the EU. So take that for what you will. Also this week, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who was not acting as the head of, or the president of the European Union at the time, held a 3-hour meeting at the Kremlin, primarily discussing the potential for peace in Ukraine, so they say. The meeting, which sparked conversations about EU representation, concluded with a brief press statement that did not include Q&A. During the discussions, Orban said that he sought Putin's perspectives on 3 key points. First, his thoughts on existing peace initiatives. Second, his views on the possibility of a ceasefire and timing of peace negotiations. And third, Putin's stance on European security post-conflict. Although Orban indicated that he received answers from Putin, he didn't really reveal any specifics and merely noted that the positions of Kyiv and Moscow are still significantly divergent. Putin reiterated his precondition for peace, demanding the withdrawal of Ukrainian forces, and demanded that from all of the partially occupied regions. Effectively, Russia wants to annex them, and it's a demand that Kyiv views as a surrender, posing a major hurdle to peace talks. Furthermore, Putin accused Ukrainian leaders of extending the conflict to sustain martial law, suggesting that political motives are influencing Kyiv's role. Putin said a bunch of nonsense, and so did Orban. Orban did a little double move. He met with both Zelensky and with Putin this week. I would say, as far as my reading of serious journalists in Hungary, this is seen as kind of a move to prop him up domestically. I don't know how much this will really get things done diplomatically or internationally, but it certainly made Orban look important on the international stage. And I think that's, at least according to their analysis, seemed to be the goal there. So take that for what you will. Up next, an investigation by the media outlet Babel, released on July 3rd, raised concerns about the participation of Russian athletes in the upcoming Paris Olympic Games. According to the report, at least 9 out of the 33 Russian athletes allowed to compete as ostensibly neutral have visited occupied Crimea, participated in propaganda events, or have shown support for Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine. Additionally, social media activity of 5 other athletes suggests that they also support the war. In response to these findings, it is important to note that the executive board of the International Olympic Committee, or the IOC, decided in December of 2023 that both Russian and Belarusian athletes could compete as individual neutral athletes under, quote, strict eligibility conditions. These conditions strictly prohibit participation as national teams, displaying national flags or symbols, and the inclusion of any athlete or support personnel who have publicly supported the war or are associated with the military or security organizations in Russia or Belarus. Despite these regulations, the investigation revealed that one of the athletes, wrestler Nachin Mongush, had previously served in the Russian army, which directly contravenes their stipulated rules. This controversy follows an official 4-year ban imposed on Russia for systematic doping practices. However, Russia has continued to participate under the banner of the Russian Olympic Committee, or ROC, in both the 2020 and 2022 Olympic Games. The ROC itself was suspended in October 2023 after it asserted control over the athletic organizations in Russian-occupied parts of Ukraine. So basically, I mean, the takeaway from this, in my opinion, is like this will never end with Russia. Just kick them out of the Olympics, and this will all go away. We can't be wasting this much of the Olympic Committee's valuable time constantly dealing with crazy nonsense from Russia violating obvious rules. But anyway, moving on. Russia is intensifying its efforts to block VPN services and restrict internet-based phone calls, aiming to limit access to reliable information and enhance surveillance of its own citizens. This is all according to UK Defense Intelligence, which was published on July 4th and reported by various media sources. The Russian government has removed several VPN applications from its app store at the behest of the federal. So I should say, this is a weird, I don't think they translated this correctly. They demanded that Apple remove several VPN applications from the App Store at the behest of the Federal Service for Supervision of Communications. In other words, they went to Apple and said, you need to remove all the VPN apps. And as far as I understand, Apple is compliant with that. They didn't, for some reason, this media report didn't mention Apple. I think that was a typo. These apps were allegedly enabling access to illegal content. The UK Defense Intelligence suggests that the move is likely aimed at preventing Russian citizens from accessing independent Russian and international media, and to facilitate easier monitoring by Russian security services. Furthermore, the Federal Security Service has recently mandated that telecom providers disable voice-over internet protocol telephone services. Officially, this is to reduce fraud. However, the UK assesses that this measure is probably designed to augment the Russian authorities' capacity to monitor and control the communications grid of both private individuals and businesses. This is just generally seems to be part of a larger Russian strategy that the UK Defense Ministry views as, this part of a larger surveillance attempt on the Russian population. Colonel Artem Gorodilov, previously identified as the commander of the 234th Guards Air Assault Regiment implicated in the civilian killings in Bucha during the invasion, has been detained in Russia on charges of large-scale fraud. The Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation arrested him in Moscow, and this is reported by Russian media. During the full-scale invasion, Gorodilov's regiment was stationed in Bucha, and approximately 30 soldiers under his command are accused of committing, and I should say, essentially proven of committing atrocities in the Kyiv region. These soldiers were identified through phone calls made using mobile phones of the civilians that they had killed. Following his role in the Kyiv region, Gorodilov was promoted ahead of schedule to the rank of Colonel of the Guard. He was later appointed as the commander of a separate air assault unit, and as of May, he was reported to be commanding the 83rd Guards Air Assault Brigade based in Ustyursk. Currently, Gorodilov is in custody with allegations against him involving the embezzlement of 1 million rubles, which is $11,000. In this case, this case follows other reports, including the burial of a former commander of the Russian Navy, Captain Korkmal, and who had infamously declared so I guess this case follows other incidents of Russian jerks dying or being sent to prison, I guess is what the report's trying to say, including the Russian Navy's Admiral Gorshkov, who had previously declared the capability of his frigate to target a residential building with a Zircon missile. He basically said, I'll shoot a residential building with a missile. So he's dead, which is good. On Wednesday, the leaders of Russia and China celebrated their efforts to solidify their alliance against Western nations during a summit in Kazakhstan, aiming to expand their influence in the strategically important Central Asian region. Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping attended the meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Astana, a group led by Beijing encompassing Central Asia, India, and Iran, which aims to balance U.S. dominance in global affairs. During the televised remarks before a bilateral discussion, Putin praised the strength of Russia's relationship with China and highlighted the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as an effective tool for promoting international policy goals. Blah, 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 Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Xi's emphasized the necessity for Moscow and Beijing to deepen their relationship. Basically, this is just a big conference. I don't think any major developments happened. But additionally, Putin met with the head of Turkmenistan. And Turkmenistan is not officially part of the SCO, but I think they were attending the meeting. And so, Putin had a meeting with the head of Turkestan. It's, a kind of very specific idiosyncratic country where having a meeting with the leader is kind of important. So anyway, I thought I should mention that. During the meeting, Putin also met with Turkey's President Erdogan in a separate discussion. Erdogan conveyed to Putin that Turkey could establish a basis for peace talks between Ukraine and Russia. And the statement further noted that Turkey is looking to help establish a fair peace. And Russia's partner Belarus is scheduled to join the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, I think today. And lastly, President Lukashenko remarked that the group is, he looks forward to joining the group, and it's like an alternative to the U.S. world order and all that stuff. And then the UN Secretary Antonio Guterres is set to speak at the summit on Thursday. And lastly, I have my little report on the Russian economy. I'll try to sort of summarize here. Russia's central bank chief announced that inflation in Russia has exceeded expectations, which were already high, prompting likely discussions of an interest rate hike earlier this month. Speaking at a televised news conference, she indicated that the central bank would primarily focus on the magnitude of the rate increase and acknowledged that a hike was inevitable. Currently, Russia's interest rate is at 16%, and inflation is reported at 8.3%, which is above their target of 4%. Nabalina noted that the data available pointed to a considerable deviation from their earlier projections, and that the next rate setting, which is scheduled for July 26th, that's where the specifics of the rate adjustment will be decided. So basically, they're desperately trying not to overheat the Russian economy still. According to the Federal Tax Service of Russia, the total revenue of Russian companies in 2023 decreased by 36%, which was about $9 trillion in a decrease. This marks a significant drop from the previous year, and the sharp decline is attributed to external sanctions imposed on Russia. The sanctions have forced companies to overhaul their logistics and production processes and to adapt to new economic circumstances. Additionally, the lack of sufficiently developed infrastructure for economic relations with Russia's so-called friendly countries means that new trade and financial ties need to be established over the next few years. Despite these challenges, the overall profitability in organizations in 2023 was reportedly on par with levels seen in 2019. Some sectors, including mechanical engineering, transitioned from being consistently unprofitable to profitable. This shift has been driven by factors such as state defense procurement and efforts towards import substitution, which are influenced by sanctions and the ongoing war. The Russian government has set a target to replicate Western microchips throughout the 2000s, and they want to accomplish this by 2028. Meanwhile, the profitability of Russia's coal mining sector saw a drastic decline, with profits plummeting 93% in the first 4 months of 2024. I think they exported most of that coal, so that's why. And then lastly, in terms of the Russian economy, Alina Rybakova, who is the vice president of the Kyiv School of Economics, had an interview with Forbes Ukraine and basically gave some analysis of the current state of the Russian economy. She commented that while the Russian economy is currently overheated, it is not in a state of crisis yet. She highlighted the critical role that oil prices play in maintaining Russia's economic stability, pointing out the difficulty in precipitating an economic crisis in Russia without a concerted effort to block oil exports. Rybakova mentioned that even if Western countries were to block Russian oil exports, the impact might still be mitigated. She explained that Russia might find new ways to circumvent such blocks within around 6 months, and that the relevant decrease in supply could actually drive oil prices up, which would offset some of the financial losses. She further explained that a significant drop in oil prices could genuinely trigger a crisis in the Russian economy. She cited a hypothetical scenario where oil prices drop to $40 per barrel as a definite catalyst for economic trouble in Russia. However, she noted that such a drastic increase in oil prices is not anticipated in the near future, and that therefore, under the current circumstances, Russia can sustain its economy and probably doesn't face a genuine economic crisis over the next several years. So that concludes my news report. Now I'm going to turn it over to our Kyiv correspondent, Mr. Bionade, for a quick news item, and then we'll go over to the German aid to Ukraine for his report. Bionade, over to you.
Thank you, Joseph. A Kyiv correspondent today, not in Kyiv, but a friend of the project is in Kyiv. And today there was a rally, a protest happening in Kyiv. It was around the Azovstal defenders, which are still in captivity, 900 of them. If you remember, the defenders, which basically defended the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol and hold out. 2,500 of them were captured. 900 are still in prisons in Russia and occupied Ukraine. This was a protest all about it. In the upcoming weeks, we will have more content about these topics and about the Azovstal defenders for you, and also an upcoming interview with a representative from the Association of Azovstal defender families. All right, that were the news from Kyiv. Back to you, Joseph. I think maybe to Maurice for the German aid segment, right?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. First of all, you can use German aid to Ukraine if you want to, but I said it before. If you want to say Maurice, it's totally fine for me. But going to the German news for this week, it's not a lot. I have just two news items for me to report on. Starting with Friday, the German government announced that they have officially delivered the third German Patriot fire unit to Ukraine. This means that Ukraine has now 4 Patriot fire units in service, of which 3 were supplied by Germany. And already as the last item of this week, for Jesus Christ, Homadas, I'm very sorry if I butchered that name, in the Zaporizhia Oblast received each one off-road capable Toyota Land Cruiser pickup from the GEZ, the German Society for International Cooperation, financed by the German government. The pickups will further improve the Homadas capabilities to distribute humanitarian aid to the civilian population in the area. And that's already all I had for this week. Back to you.
Thank you. Next, I believe, let me just double check my schedule here. Yes, we have Vasil up. Vasil is, of course, a lawyer from Dnipro, and he wants to discuss a recent ruling that occurred in the European Court for Human Rights. So, Vasil, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Do you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I want to tell about, I think, very important judicial victory for Ukraine. It took near 10 years for Ukraine. It is a case about that Ukraine complained against Russia to European Court of Human Rights and accuse Russia in violation in maybe dozens of basic human rights in Crimea. As I said before, this case took near 10 years. It started in 2014 when Ukraine complained to this court, and 25 of June this year, the Grand Chamber of European Court of Human Rights make a decision that Russia violate, as I said before, dozens of basic human rights which were guaranteed by Convention on Human Rights. First of all, I want to tell that this decision, this judgment, I think maybe the biggest which I have seen in European Courts of Human Rights. It consists 1,392 paragraphs, and it's very big. Also, I want to tell that European Court of Human Rights consider many violations of the convention, and also violation of the, I think, maybe fundamental basic rights, like right to life, like prohibition of torture against people, like right to liberty and security, right to fair trial, freedom of thought and religion, and also freedom of expression. I have noted not all articles and rights which were violated by Russia, but I think it's maybe the main one. I want to tell that if you read this decision, I think you will understand that Russia is a totally terroristic organization, because every violated right, it consists many examples of such violation. If you look of violation right to life, we see that many cases about it, about such violation, like one victim was Rashad Ametov. He disappeared in March 2014, and he was tortured and summarily executed. And nobody find him till now. Also, Mr. Ivanuk, he was beaten to death in Crimea in April 2014. Also, there were 11 of the victims. They are remained missing, and many other examples of violation of Article 2 of the European Convention of Human Rights. It's we are talking about right to life. It's fundamental things. Also, if we will talk about another violations like prohibition of torture. Sorry, Erlend.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, was it proven in the court case that the Russian state were the perpetrators of these offenses?
Yeah, it's I think one of the not the all, but one of the main issue of this judgment. It's about that court noted consider that that these violations was made by Russia.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I will continue. If you talk about next examples, prohibition of torture, such examples were about a mock execution. It's about electrocuted and other beaten and another tortures which were made by Russian military forces or even Russian CSDF. It's something like not official organization of protection, in quotes, of Crimea. If we are talking about right to liberty and security, it was examples are about that people were blindfolded, and also they were detained without any court decision. Such cases, such situations was very spread. It's about dozens of people who were detained without any court decision. Also, if we are talking about right to fair trial, it's a guarantee of the European Convention of Human Rights. Very important for me as a lawyer, it's conclusion of the court that European Court of Human Rights made statement that court system and law system in Crimea it isn't established by law. I think it's very different situation from other cases in European Courts of Human Rights, like as Cyprus against Turkey, when when courts don't make such statement. I think it's maybe first time when court said that law system and court system in some territory which is occupied by another country is totally unlawful. Absolutely. Okay. Also, it's, I think, very important to say and to spread that we have in Crimea violation of Article 9 and Article 10. It's about freedom of thought and religion, and also freedom of expression. It's very important to note, it's very important to say that court noted that Russia totally, I think I can say, totally destroy, maybe say in such way, Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and also Ukrainian Tatars religion community also too. And when we are spoken about freedom of expression, all television, radio companies, and other organization, they were suspended by Russia. And freedom of expression, and I want to say that court noted that, one second, sorry. Yeah, and court noted that the freedom of expression in Crimea is the worst indicator received in any time. It's there isn't freedom of expression in Crimea.
I think it's very interesting because, especially the part of religion, because Russia is constantly using religion as a talking point in their propaganda, saying that the Ukrainians are violating freedom of religion because of some arrests, etc., in the Moscow Patriot Orthodox Church. And I think it's very interesting that and important that this obviously it isn't Ukraine that is violating freedom of religion. It's Russia.
Yeah, Erlend, I absolutely agree with you, and I want to say you can distinguish, absolutely distinguish situation in Ukraine even now and in occupied part of Ukraine and Crimea too.
Did we lose Vasil?
Yeah, it seems like it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll message him and ask if he will be able to reconnect.
Real quick, we actually did have a quick question in chat. Maybe we can just cover it now. Maurice, Patriots, question mark?
The fourth one, right? I saw the question. Yeah, there was a report by Politico saying that there will be 3 additional Patriot fire units announced at the next NATO meeting, which is, when I remember correct, starts in 2 days, and the fire units will come from. I'm getting spammed. I think that's. Oh no, that's Bionade. Never mind. Sorry. And the fire units will be announced according to the report by the US, by Germany, and Romania. The big question there is, of course, when they say by Germany and Romania. I mean, Romania has just announced to provide one to Ukraine under some conditions. So the big question is if that's just a re-announcement, because I really can't see Romania announce a second one without even training of the first one started yet. And the same goes for Germany. We have just delivered a Patriot fire unit on Friday. Now it's the question if they meant that's just these or if that's actually an announcement. Bloomberg, however, also reported at the beginning of June that the German government was back then already considering pledging a fourth one to Ukraine. So it's not the first time a news outlet actually reports on this matter. In my opinion, it's unlikely, just given that we just have handed over one. Of course, the German government has, or the Bundestag's budget committee in particular, has just approved the purchase of 4 Patriot fire units worth 1.4 billion, something like that, as well as 100 PEC-2 missiles for the German Luftwaffe, which means that Germany is currently re-procuring 8 fire units. This, of course, gives us a little bit of breathing room for the additional pledges to Ukraine, as they would get replaced anyway in the future. But we have to keep in mind that of all the reprocured missiles and fire units, not a single missile or launcher or radar or entire fire unit has actually been arrived in Bundeswehr stocks, and the deliveries will take years to come to the Bundeswehr. So yeah, it's really a good question whether this actually means now an additional delivery or not. Of course, we have now more breathing room, but yeah, we have to see. We have to see. It's right now it's just a media report.
Okay, so in summary, like the announcement is real, but like in terms of the practical details, we just don't know. It doesn't seem we don't have a clear path to like how they actually get to Ukraine right now, right?
Yeah,
In a
I mean,
timely manner, at least.
yeah, I mean, it could be an announcement, but I don't think so. Because the problem is I didn't read the article myself, because it's paywalled and I couldn't bypass it. So it might be that they are just referring to the Patriot fire unit delivered by Germany just now, days ago, and announced by Romania days ago. So then it's the question, then it's just the US battery, which will be announced, because there we don't have a official announcement yet, if I recall correctly. If they don't mean it, like I really like, does anybody see Romania actually pledging a second one now without even training on the first one started yet? I think that's completely unlikely to happen. Yeah, so who knows? Who knows?
Okay, so it sounds like the press kind of combined 4 separate things into one thing, and that was not the correct idea. And now
I
everyone's
assume
confused
now.
more. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, sorry. So we have Vasil back, and we just wanted to clear that up, and we'll now go back to the previous segment on the European Court of Human Rights. Is that good?
Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. In Ukraine, we have some blackouts, and internet connection sometimes is very bad. So sorry about this. I want to say that Erlend, you're absolutely right. I think I want to say that this decision is proving that that Russia have problems, not problems, that Russia violate freedom of religion, totally violate, and we have absolutely good. No, good, it's a bad word. I think we have examples that in Ukraine even now we have Moscow Patriarch representatives, but in occupied Crimea or occupied territories of Ukraine, others, we don't have Ukrainian Orthodox Church representatives. And also we don't have such churches there. And also we have examples when such priests of Ukrainian Orthodox Church are tortured or even killed. In this decision, in this judgment, there are several examples when religion buildings were fired, destroyed, and priests were detained and also tortured. It's not about freedom of religion, it's absolutely about another one.
Yeah, thank you, Vasil. I think it's very important to highlight the violations that are continuously going on also in other parts of Ukraine, but very interesting to hear that that the European Courts of Human Rights found these violations in Crimea as well.
Yeah.
Did you have any other examples?
I have many examples because even this, as I said before, this decision is very big, and there are many examples. I can tell about examples of violation freedom of expression, like that we had many television and radio companies of Crimean Tatars in Crimea, like Chernomorska television and radio company TRC, ATR, its main Crimean Tatar channel, which were broadcasting to Crimea and Turkey and other European countries before Russian occupation, and different others television and radio companies, and all of them were suspended by Russians. All of them stopped broadcasting and stopped working. Also, if we spoken about examples, if we are spoken about freedom of religion, also we have examples that Muslims church also suspended by Russian, and Russia tried to take control for all spheres of living in Crimea, and also sphere of religion, and they make everything to control over religious groups.
So a question I have for this: do you know if they just shut down the mosques and church and reinstated new ones which they control, or did they not? Build new ones,
Yeah. They took control over all churches and Muslim also, and now there are in Orthodox took control Moscow Patriarchate over, and Muslim and over Muslim took control Russians some like Muslim church. Do you hear me?
Yes. Thank you. Do you have anything more you want to say? Or
No, I think I have told everything what I want. If anybody have question, I try to answer.
so I guess one question I have is, of course, Russia isn't a part of the European Council anymore. So will this be the last litigation that Ukraine has against Russia in the European Courts of Human Rights for now, or are there other cases already ongoing?
Look, yeah, this question were solved by European Court of Human Rights. It were solved in 2022 when courts make a decision that every complaint that will be that it will be made till, as I remember correctly, in September 2022, the courts will solve this complaint and make judgment. But after September 2022, it will not have jurisdiction. In this case, Ukraine complains in 2014 and made extra complaint in 2018. Also, I think can be more another judgment, not so maybe great or big, because I think it's maybe one of the biggest complaints which was in European Court of Human Rights, but I think can be more decision be made in future.
Yeah, and then I also wondered if so I know that in different juridical instances, it's important to have reference cases. Do you think that it's possible that, for instance, the International Court of Justice or other important international courts can use these convictions in the European Court of Human Rights for Ukraine's benefit, basically, or are they completely separate in their?
Look, I think it can be. It can be used in our trials and our cases, because it's also noted many facts that court noted in their decision. That is why I think it's very useful for many other jurisdictions and many other institutions which are solving disputes against Ukraine, against Russia. Sorry, and I think it's very useful also for Ukraine because Ukraine can show this decision and say it, that we have situation when court noted such. It's not a words by Ukraine, it's a words which were said by court, and I think it's very useful for us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you too.
Joseph, do you have any questions or any other people in the panel before we go to the next section?
I don't think I have any questions. I mean, I think it's all this is pretty obvious to people who kind of pay attention to what Russia's doing day in, day out, right? But I mean, as Vessel said, it's a very important victory to get this stuff like on record in an international court. I think it's it's an important victory, and it even though to us it's almost become, I don't know, we've gotten used to the fact that this is just the reality. I think it's important that like to understand that a lot of people haven't kind of accepted that, and that maybe this decision will, in its own small way, sway some people to understand the true depth of depravity that Russia has descended into in prosecuting this illegal invasion. So I think that's that about covers it. Does anyone else on the panel have any questions before we move to the next segment?
Not for me.
Okay, so yeah, I think up next, thank you, Vassal, very much. I think it was a very interesting piece of information. So up next, we actually have Bionade is going to discuss, I think briefly, recently there was a connection between the Ukrainian and Baltic countries' power grids, I believe, is the topic. So Bionade, without butchering the topic further, I'll turn it over to you, my friend. Over to you.
Bionade, we cannot hear you, I think.
Here we go. Now. So you should see now a news report, right? All right. Great. Okay, welcome everyone. Yeah, we're gonna talk a bit like about electricity grids and electricity networks, especially on the continent of Europe, and especially who read the news in the last couple of weeks saw that the Baltic states announced to cut their ties with the Russian energy grid in 2025, and I remembered, yeah, we have this nice energy grid. We can see it here. Basically, the different parts of the grid which get interconnected, that gives the whole network more stability. There are some rules in physics and so on. You can learn about this if you read a bit about it. Really interesting topic. And yeah, on this graphic you can see the different states, and the Baltics are still connected to the Russian network. They're still, doesn't mean that they are like dependent on the Russian network, but they give each other stability, and yeah, there's like electricity trade, or even if there's no electricity trade, right? These networks are still coupled and run. The generators run on the same frequency. Everything is synchronized. So the Baltics want to decouple soon, and yeah, like we all ask ourselves, hey, possibly what's happening with Ukraine? And as you can see, Ukraine is already connected because Ukraine, and this is another article from Scientific American about this, Ukraine actually unplugged from Russia and joined Europe's power grid very, very fast. Then on the 24th of February of 2022, just 4 hours before the invasion, in the morning, they had scheduled disconnect, which was meant to be a test for, or a trial for 72 hours. If Ukraine can operate the energy grid on their own for their country. And when the Russian invasion happened, it all went relatively quickly. Ukraine then asked the European Union to join their electricity grid, or Europe's electricity grid, which was planned, but yeah, much faster. And yeah, on March the 16th, they synchronized these power systems, these power grids, and like they write here in the article, it was basically a year's work in 2 weeks. and Ukraine, yeah, basically made it. Two very interesting articles. Just Google for Scientific American how Ukraine unplugged from the Russian energy grid and joined Europe's power grid. Yeah, yeah, short explanation about what happened there and what the Baltics are planning to do. Now I need to stop sharing. So, if anyone has questions. If not, I would say let's go to the next plan segment.
I have one question. I don't think you have an answer. It's more of a rhetorical question. So, are these countries they're leaving the Russian power grid, and kind of the general like the I think that when people look at that, they see that like Russia is probably stable, and these countries leaving will hurt those countries, and that's why they have to work with Europe to stabilize themselves. I think that's kind of the baseline assumption. But what is happening to the Russian power grid as a result of these countries leaving? Like, how much power were these countries giving to Russia? Which I imagine with the Baltic states it's not that much, but with Ukraine it may have been a lot, because Ukraine actually does produce a lot of power. And also their ability to stabilize the border regions of Russia, like for example Belgorod, was probably important. And now we're seeing like these power problems in Belgorod, where they have like blackouts and whatnot. And I wonder if it's connected somehow.
I mean, it's an interesting question, Andrew. And there was from the Chaos Computer Club, the Chaos Computer Association, a nice, yeah, a nice event where they talked in a segment or in a presentation about yeah, how to cause a blackout and about the effects which are like on this electricity grid, and like the more generators you have running in this grid and how the bigger the grid is, the more stabilized gets it, right? But you have to time everything, and there are more machines which need to get timed, and there's obviously an effect to that too. So yeah, it's really questionable what effects this will have on Russia. So if we ever get an expert on this topic, would be great. But yeah, if you're interested, just look the segment up from the Chaos Computer Club. There's much explained about like how this electricity grids work and how they support each other through, like, I think two main physical effects, self-rotation effect, and basically you can exchange the frequency can drop a bit if there's not enough power in the grid. But yeah, it's electric calculation. So yeah.
Yeah, we know like a couple of people who know a little bit about the Russian energy grid. We could maybe like get a little segment on that. So we'll maybe look into that in the future. Yeah, thanks. I mean, Andrew, thanks for your question. Do we have any other questions for the panel related to this topic?
Not for me.
Okay, so our final segment this week is, of course, Andrew. We got Andrew on. We had we get people a lot in chat asking us like what's going on the front lines. Well, you know, they ask us certain questions about the situation on the battlefield. We always just refer people to Andrew's streams. Andrew, you usually stream on I know 8 p.m. Thursdays. I remember that from the old plug. Is it Tuesdays? Do I have that right?
I just do Fridays now because I was gonna start doing Mondays, but I don't know. it's hard to find time, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess like we'll preface this by saying you're super busy. Like you have to. I think what's going on is like there's just the problem gets exponentially worse. Every new video has to be cross-checked with every other video to make sure it's not a repeat, right? So there's just infinitely more work every time. Like more work is happening right now that you're on this stream, which is I don't know. I feel for you, buddy. I hope we can get enough people in the basement. Maybe we'll talk about the if we're still recruiting for that effort later on. But I wanted to ask you. I think Erlend had a thing you wanted to ask you about. But real quick, I just wanted to mention, just because it's in the news so much this week, and especially in like, I think a lot of people are going to be reading the words Chasiv Yar who have never heard of it, Andrew. So I was just wanted maybe just a quick update for our audience and maybe anyone who cares to know, like, what's going on with Chasiv Yar. What do you think is like the important takeaway from like all this talk about Chasiv Yar this week from someone who like has been paying attention to it for a lot longer than just this recent buzz about it?
All right, so Chasiv Yar is a pretty important defensive position because it's on a ridge that runs north to south. So it kind of like is this natural wall that that's stopping Russia, that you can defend. It's like a big natural wall that you can defend. So Russia has a while ago, several months ago, they broke the primary frontal defense of Chasiv Yar. That was to the east of the city or town, whatever. So they broke that line. Ukraine then had to fall back to what was called the Canal district of Chasiv Yar. And this district was not particularly defensible because it's on the wrong side of the canal. Okay, so it's called the Canal district because there's a giant canal that runs through the city, and it's on the wrong side of the canal. So Ukraine had to cross the canal to get there to resupply it, which is it just complicates logistics pretty significantly, and it's also kind of in a low ground, so it had a lot going against it. But the primary fighting for Chasiv Yar has been going on in this canal because Russia wanted to push Ukraine across to just have total control of their eastern part of the canal. It took Russia a pretty long time to do that, but they've now successfully done it, where they've pretty much pushed Ukraine out of that little micro district and all of the surrounding forests to the north and to the south. The canal itself is basically impassable. It's a very steep, especially like in this city in particular, it's very steep, like remarkably steep. If you look at photographs, it's like almost a vertical cliff into the canal. So you can't cross it. And it's pretty wide too. So there are areas just north of the city and just south of the city where there isn't a canal. Instead, it's kind of flat ground of pumping stations that pump the water from one part of the canal to the other. So those pumping station areas are where Russia is going to focus their attacks. Now, this is basically a kind of a natural land bridge across this the canal, and it narrows their ability to attack to these two really small bottlenecks. I think they're about 500 meters across. So that's pretty much the situation that we're in now. So Russia is cleaning up the areas north and south near these two crossing points. The southern crossing point has been cleared, and Russia has been fighting across it for a while now without any success. The northern crossing point, they have crossed it in these kind of like YOLO attacks, where they just kind of like jump on a vehicle and drive as fast as they can, and they crossed it, and I don't think anybody survived, but they have crossed it a few times, and they're trying to solidify their positions to the east and of the canal up there, so that they can launch proper full-scale attacks across. Now, getting across the canal is going to be very difficult. And even once they get across, supplying themselves across the canal is going to be difficult for them. So this is probably going to be a very difficult battle for Russia. They're going to try to cross the canal in multiple positions. The further north and south you go away from Chasiv Yar, it gets easier to cross the canal because like I said, like Chasiv Yar is on a ridge, so it is on a high ground. So as a result, to dig the canal, they had to dig down pretty deep, and that's why you get those big cliffs. Whereas when you go south, especially into the low ground, the canal is only a few, like maybe like 1 or 2 meters deep, and you can easily drive across it or walk across it. So, and by the way, the canal is empty of water. There's no water other than like rain runoff. So it's not like a full anymore. So that's kind of the position in Chasiv Yar. The battle for Chasiv Yar is the proper battle is just kind of beginning. I know a lot of people have been talking about it for a long time, but all of the things that we've been talking about were developing the positions that were necessary to actually start the attack in the first place. So if you kind of think of it in like terms of chess, like we just like these were like the openings, and now we're in the mid game, and then eventually we'll get to the end game. So I fully expect Russia to eventually capture Chasiv Yar. I really doubt they'll capture it in a direct frontal attack. They'll probably flank it in the south, I imagine, or maybe the north. But it's going to take tremendous resources. It's going to and probably just enormous casualties.
I saw a statement from a Ukrainian military official, I believe, that, well, basically that's why I showed the video, that it's really difficult for Ukraine to defend when there is no city anymore. And that's kind of what Russia is trying to do, I think, as well. They're raising the buildings, they're leveling the buildings, basically. And that makes it really difficult for Ukraine to have any defensive positions in the city on the long term as well. And logistics and personnel you don't really have anywhere to stay.
But it's also true for the attacker. The attacker has nowhere to go to.
Yeah, but they don't care, right? They don't care about losing people, so
this is how you can end up with really big gray areas where the an established Russian position and the established Ukrainian position can be very far apart, because everywhere in the middle is impossible to hold because there's nothing there. And Russia has run into this problem over and over again, where they resort to these giant bombing campaigns, and once the campaign is over, they can't advance because there's nothing to advance into. So it is a double-edged sword for them, and it can create, like in Ivanivska, just to the south of Chasiv Yar, they completely demolished that town, and now they can't advance out of the town because the town is so destroyed. They can't build up enough forces in it to push out, and also they can't get supplies there to build up the forces that they would need and the strength that they would need, because the destruction that they did to all the roads makes the roads almost impassable with vehicles, and you can only really get there on foot or in a tracked vehicle. So these sorts of large-scale bombing campaigns are a double-edged sword. And we saw the same sort of thing in Pervomaisk, which is near Avdiivka, where they completely demolished like 3/4 of the town about a year and a half ago. And only very recently were they able to capture the town, and they're able to capture it because they pushed north of the town out of Avdiivka. So it took them capturing Avdiivka to capture Pervomaisk. And the reason why is because they just demolished everything. So demolishing everything it makes it harder to defend, but also makes it much harder to attack.
Yeah, and I know Ukraine tried to create sort of a buffer also when they were leaving Bakhmut. They were demolishing a lot of the buildings here on the western part of the city before it fell.
Yeah, because they were afraid of Russia being able to put ATGMs in certain key buildings, so they were demolishing basically every building with windows pointing west, which was a lot of them.
I have a question about the situation in Vovchansk. There's been this kind of interesting situation where we might think that there is a Russian pocket here, which is cut off. And I'm not sure if the audience ever got to see it, because we had on the stream, you had this problem where you didn't start the stream on Friday, or if it was a part of the stream. But I remember you were saying that you showed all the strikes, and over like a month there's like no Russian strikes in this industrial area here, or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's like an aggregate factory, I think. So yeah, we have no recorded Russian strikes of any kind. Airstrikes, drone strikes, artillery shelling, anything. We have no Russian anything in that little pocket there. But the Russians are attacking like the whole 360 degrees around it. So it's kind of funny.
Real quick, aggregate meaning like gravel or something like that, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So there might be some Russians there, but we don't really know.
Yeah, we know that the Russians pushed there. We know that Russians were trying to link up with the Russians who had pushed there. We do know that Russians were successfully getting through to resupply the people who were there. And we also know that they were not reliably resupplying them, because a lot of the vehicles going to do that resupply were getting destroyed. What we don't know is if the guys are still there, or if they are there, how well supplied they are.
But this is kind of no man's land right now, most of this.
I don't know if it's a no man's land. It's more of like, I guess it is a no man's land. It's like a boiling, like a battle. It's like one day you'll see Russians in a position, and the next day the Ukrainians will be there, and then the next day the Russians will be there, and the next day the Ukrainians will be there, and that's how that whole area is, except for the aggregate plant apparently, because we have nothing about Ukraine being in the aggregate plant, and no Russian strikes on the aggregate plant. So. But everywhere else, it's like this boiling mess, except for the eastern side of the city, where we've had no Russian activity in a while.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. And then one of the reasons why I asked you to come is because one of the main critical situations that we've observed over the last, I guess, how many months? I'm not sure. Since the winter, is that Russia can almost freely, unhindered, fly surveillance drones over a lot of parts of Ukraine, and even deep behind the front lines. And you mentioned this post from the Southern Operational Command, where they state that they registered 234 Russian reconnaissance UAVs, and they could only shoot down 4 of them.
Well, they shot down 6.
6. Okay.
Yeah. I think there's there's a post last night where they said what they shot down. It was like 2 Zalas, a few Erlends, etc. Yeah, they shot down 6, and I think they shot down a few Lancets as well. But yeah, it's every day they post the stat probably every day, if not most days. And they always have over 200 drones flying, and sometimes it's up to 300. And they shoot down like half a dozen a day, or something like that. Sometimes fewer, sometimes more. And that ratio is not ideal. It's just, and also keep in mind that this is just Operational Command South. So this is like, I believe they cover like Odessa, Mykolaiv, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. So it's just like the whole like southern part of the front.
And then you have Operational Command East and North, right?
Yeah. And then also West.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know what West is doing. I think they're just like guarding the border or something in the north.
Yeah, but this problem is just, it's been growing, and also we don't see any immediate solutions to it. But what both you and me know is that Ukraine really wants to try and start shooting these down, or shooting them down. It's probably not the correct word. Crashing them down with other drones. Have you seen many of those? I have a video. I'll show it.
Yeah, I think I've seen about a dozen of them now. One came out yesterday of Azala being taken out by a drone. Seeing the Zala get taken out, yeah, this is Azala.
Yeah, and it's an FPV drone. It's a like you can see the,
yeah, you can see his little propellers.
Yes. I think that's very interesting, because this is a classic, like I would assume more or less a classic FPV drone. Maybe they tweaked it so that it could go this high, but I would expect actually to see different UAVs made specifically for this, that doesn't have the same shape as an FPV drone. But yeah, this seems to be quite, high up as well. It's not the maximum altitude, I think, of the Zala, but how far up do they fly, by the way? Do you know?
I think a Zala can go up to like 1,600 or 1,800 feet, something like that.
No, it's not easy to shoot down.
Yeah, I think this does not look that high. This
No.
looks like I don't know, what would you say, like 10,000 feet? Maybe
10,000 feet?
Oh, this is pretty high, don't you think?
It's I've never seen an FPV drone this high. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I'm
And it's
impressed that Erlend can just like handle Imperial. This like you're just like 10,000 feet. I know what that is.
oh,
Airplanes fly in feet, buddy.
yeah. Yeah. But if you look at the impact, I don't think it actually hits it. I think it remote detonates
Maybe. Yeah.
a little bit over.
Or they just cut it because they missed.
Well, we know that they remote detonate FPV drones, so why wouldn't they do this in this case?
And even if you miss, unless you like take yourself out, you could just try again.
Yeah, but I think so. This is kind of proof of concept. You've seen a few of these videos, and looking back when Ukraine kind of had some small successes with drones, they very quickly adapted the technology and the tactics. Do you expect to see more of this? Like substantially more of this? And do you think it will help Ukraine?
Well, it all hinges on if you can track the recon drones, right?
Yeah.
Tracking them is the hard part. And people are saying, can the Gepard shoot it down? Probably not. No, I doubt the Gepard can. Honestly, I'm not sure the Gepard's radar can see the drone. And even if the radar can, it might not have the range.
Yeah.
Gepards are really more for shooting down like low flying missiles and helicopters and stuff, not little tiny drones flying really high up. You have to understand, like, especially the Zala is has a really small radar cross section. Like, it's tiny. It's like the size of a small bird.
Yeah, Thierry says that the image is not higher than 2,500 feet. I'm sure there are people who can estimate this.
I know
quite
there is a
precisely.
way. There is a way to find how high it is by, especially if there's a rotation. You can take the known length of an object and then rotate it through frames, and I'll tell you how high you are. So you could analyze it to find exactly how high it is if you wanted to.
But yeah, we know that Ukraine or some developers are making drones that are specifically made to intercept other aerial vehicles, and they are probably going to perform a lot better. And one of the reasons why they started to do this, as far as I understand, wasn't actually the reconnaissance drones. It was for helicopters. But now this is probably the greatest threat for Ukraine, actually, which is, it's a really big problem for Ukraine that the Russians can fly so much so freely.
Yeah, I mean, taking out the drones is easy. Like, I think that's the easiest part. It's just detecting. Well, it's detecting them and tracking them. That's the hard part.
I saw a post. I don't remember if it was on Twitter or Telegram. Someone analyzed one of the issues with detecting the drones is that there is so much noise on the radio channels that they operate on that it's really, really hard to figure out what is a surveillance drone and what is not, because there's just saturated radio noise. But sometimes they can, because they can pinpoint exactly what is a UAV and what is not, what is just noise, and then they can triangulate. But these should be visible on some sort of radar. So
yeah, I think you need like a specialized radar though, or really expensive stuff. Not like I don't know, because I don't know. It depends on the radar, I guess.
yeah.
It depends on the radar.
And I think also something I read about, for instance, the NASAMS, they could maybe see them, but the problem is that the radars are actually not looking for them. They're looking for incoming cruise missiles. So you kind of have to choose what you're looking at to have a higher detection rate.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the problems, because this is probably the biggest of the threats, but it's also not a thing you're looking for. So it needs its own specialized weapons to hunt these down, and that's the problem. Is any such weapons that exist, Ukraine doesn't have. Maybe other countries have them, but Ukraine doesn't. And that just makes me that fact just makes me think of those countries as hoarders. Like, it's like, why are you just hoarding things at this point? It's like you don't need it. You know?
I think there was some news about the UK wanting to send their new laser weapon to Ukraine, and it could be useful, but it's also very circumstantial, right? Because if the weather isn't right, then the laser won't work. But then again, the drone won't be able to see much.
And the laser is going to be expensive. Like, it's making the drone so expensive. I bet those things are going to be like $80,000 each.
I don't know.
And
Well,
is EW not like a good tool here in terms of, are the drones flying too high up? I assume you can't put EW on another drone because the power consumption would be too high. Is that like, but like EW, I'm just trying to exhaust the possibilities of countermeasures involving electronic warfare for these reconnaissance drones. Is that not an option?
So it's kind of the same issue, right? They still need to detect them and find what is the signal from the drone, and if that is hard in the first place, then you don't really go anywhere with EW, because you can jam and saturate an area close to you quite easily, but when you're talking about jamming something that is flying thousands of feet up in the air and maybe even kilometers away from the station that you have, radio station that you can jam with, then you need to focus your jamming output very specifically. So it all comes down again to the detection, really. But yeah, it's possible to jam surveillance drones.
Yeah, I just want to establish, because it seems kind of I don't know, not crazy, but like that this is in fact the best solution, like what we're watching on this video, to like send a drone up there to like go like attack it, you know what I mean? But it sounds like it is, so I'm just trying to make sure.
Yeah, I mean,
cover that base.
How you take down the drone kind of doesn't matter, because they're not hard to shoot down. They're like they're completely defenseless, you know? They just fly in a straight line very slowly. You could take it down with anything. It doesn't matter. It's the finding them that's the hard part. Because taking it out with, destroying a $100,000 drone with a cheap little $400 drone sounds good to me.
Yeah, Maurice doesn't want to talk for some reason, but he apparently has some information from a German former Gepard commander, and he says that it can intercept and detect and track the Zala, but it's a very hard target.
And it has to be like, the Zala has to be like right over the Gepard. Like, one thing about the Zalas is I think people are chronically underestimate how high they're flying. Because they're really high. They really are high up. Their height alone is probably at the edge of the range of a Gepard. And then when you factor in that they're also going to be away from the Gepard on top of that, when you just do the little Pythagorean theorem over there, and square the sides and take the little square root, it's really far away. It's going to be out of the range of the Gepard, basically.
No, he just said, and Erlend, I just didn't want to talk because I remember I had this conversation already with him like long ago, probably a year ago. No, not a year ago, but feels like a year ago with Andrew, and but he just said it's a very hard target due to what Andrew said. It's extremely high speed. And I just looked up a very old tweet of him where he talked about the Zalas. There's a very famous German old Gepard commander on Twitter with like 80,000 followers. You can follow him, and he does everything from day to night just talking about Gepards. So if you're interested, go check him out. And in a tweet from 2020, he talked about the Zalas, and he said it's very important to like track them very early at least 10-kilometer distance to engage in proper combat at like 6 kilometers range. And he said multiple times during a couple of tweets that the Gepard is capable of engaging them, although it's a very difficult and strong enemy due to the speed.
So if I'm understanding correctly, then I get, I understand it's going to be more complicated than this, but I'm just trying to kind of tie this all together. Like the solution here is something to the effect of like Ukraine needs more radars, and they probably need like machine learning or some type of way to create like a findzala.exe that is capable of taking the radar and looking around and sorting the signal from the noise and finding all of the drones. Is that accurate? Like that's the real bottleneck here?
Well, so there are two different detection methods. So, like you have radar and SIGINT. And to be honest, yes, Ukraine needs more radars. But if they were to solve this issue, I think it would be because some genius finds a way to detect the drones via SIGINT, so signal intelligence, and also locate them easily. And doing that in a saturated, noisy radio space. And yes, machine learning might be the answer to this, actually. But yeah, I'm not sure if it's solvable. It might be possible to mitigate the problem a little bit, but I don't see any future where Ukraine has enough radars to fix the problem, unfortunately. And thank you to Thierry, by the way, that you gave some really interesting comments in the comment section here that explain some of this. So, for instance, Volcano said that apparently the Gepard radar could resolve like a Mavic drone, but under ideal conditions, it's different. It's of course different at these heights. Thierry responds, some kind of drones, depending on how they're built, which material they're made of, are more difficult to detect. And then another interesting question was from Hermagido. How good are the F-16s against SAL and other recon drones? And Thierry responds, not better than anti-air radars. And also continues, a plane except the latest have radars that relies on the size of the radars. That size is low in a plane. In a plane, of course. So thank you to Thierry for those details. They're really important in this discussion. Do you have anything else you want to say, Andrew, before we end?
I don't know, not in particular. I do want to say that yesterday, okay, so Operational Command South, they post stats for what they destroy every day, and they're one of the few stats from Ukraine that I actually trust, because I just kind of, I get the vibes that they're more or less telling the truth. I think some other sources out of Ukraine, they can exaggerate sometimes. But anyways, yesterday they said they destroyed like 33 armored vehicles, and I just found that funny.
Andrew, I had one kind of like, I don't know, a bit off topic question, which is I noticed a few of your posts, I think, and just maybe a general trend of, I think we see kind of two extremes on the Russian side, which is like we see FPV drone attacks on Russian soldiers, and we see sometimes these really like savage like responses where they just freak out, they like throw their helmet, or they like start shooting. I mean, sometimes they successfully, at least they might not live, but they do hit the drone and like it explodes before it like it gets all the way to its target. And then, but you've also shown videos of like guys who basically just kind of give up. Like they basically just stand still and are like, all right, kill me. Like, I don't know. It seems like the drone situation has gotten really intense for the Russians, and they have these really like extreme responses to it. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, the number of people just giving up in the footage is increasing, and it's interesting to see. They just completely like all of their fight or flight response is gone. Like they're not fighting, they're not running away, they're not even like apparently scared. Like they're not like frozen either. They're just kind of like they just gave up. they're like, okay, whatever. It's interesting to see the numbers of it. There's also people offing themselves at increasing frequencies, and each other too. By the way, offing each other. I think part of it stems from this Russian tactic or whatever whatever you want to call it. But they have this thing where the attacking group has to move up and capture a position, and they have to move up at all costs. And if you take a casualty, you're supposed to abandon them and keep going. And I that mentality, I think, is really bad for morale of the troops. And I think that bad morale is what we're seeing in these videos. Like, for example, those guys who were north of Rabatina, where the one guy was wounded by a drone, and the other guy gave him a tap to the face. I think that's what was happening there. Like they had to move as quickly as possible. They had no time to stop and treat the wounded guy. I'm not even sure how wounded he was. It's hard to tell in the video, but I get the feeling he wasn't that wounded. So they had to do what they did. They didn't really have a choice. Like the other option was to just leave him there, and he would slowly succumb to whatever injury he had. The other thing is, I'm not sure how much like medical training they have, so that probably is also playing a part. And also they have really bad medical equipment, so that's also another part. So they can't treat the wounded. Even if they could, they don't have the supplies, and even if they have the supplies, they don't have the training. So all of that combined, I think, is crushing their morale. And then we see them just give up. They just completely give up, and just say like, whatever, do your best, Mr. Drone. Yeah, and also there's also a lot of situations where they decide to use grenades. I've seen them, a drone attack people, and the people decide to use a grenade, and the drone says okay and attacks somebody else. The drone warfare combined with these Russian tactics, I think, are crippling to morale. I think the drones on their own would be bad enough. I know Ukraine has their own problems with drones, with the Russian drones, but I think it's that additional Russianness on top of it that is really, really bad for these troops.
So you mentioned the medical issue. I'll just say real quick, Erlend, that there was a report by, I want to say Moscow Times, but it's one of the media outlets, the dissenting media outlets outside of Russia, but still Russian, that they did a report that like basically the medical staff in the Russian Ministry of Defense like basically said this week, like there's a massive number of preventable deaths on the front line in the Russian military just as a result of like all the things you outlined. So just kind of an interesting parallel there. And I think I totally see the connection to what you're saying, that like why people would just give up in those circumstances. Anyway, Erlend, go ahead.
And people are saying that it's the weather. All of this started before the weather turned. So the Russians were doing this all winter too. So I don't think the heat has anything to do with what they're doing.
I just wanted to show that this video went the rounds on Twitter this week, where it's like, yeah, look at the Russians, they're training their soldiers, their infantry to avoid drones, but this is never gonna work. Any Ukrainian FPV operator they're way too good to be outmaneuvered by something like this, and most of the times they're gonna be aiming for their feet when they're going to the final attack phase, or they just chase them around if they're in an open area. So, I mean,
it's like a duck in coverage. You guys have that in Europe?
Yeah, I guess I understand. But anyways, like I think this, the people who are, doing this training for soldiers, I think they know very, very well that it's not going to work, but maybe it's some kind of attempt to boost the morale, like the stupid cages on the ATVs and golf carts and motorcycles, which are never going to help. It's probably just going to make it worse, but maybe the soldiers feel that they're a little bit more protected and are willing to follow orders, etc., and go on these stupid meat assaults.
Do you remember last year, or maybe the year before, when they were doing the drone training, where they had a guy just like he was holding like a plastic grenade, and he would hold it above your head when you were laying on the ground and drop it on you, and you had to roll away? Because those videos were really funny.
Yeah.
You just had to roll away, and they had this big fat guy like dropping grenades on your face from like a meter up.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if the soldiers are smart enough to see that this is just never gonna work, but I think it's just showing the desperation on the Russian side, really. And
I'll tell you what. The Russians did that big push of telling everybody that shotguns were the way to go. Shotguns can take care of drones, no problem. They gave them shotgun training, where they would bring them out into a training exercise. They'd fly around little drones, and you could shoot them down with your shotgun, and it made people feel invincible. All right, like last night,
photos on Telegram of like Russians with shotguns and like radio transmitter things to like look for drones. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Last night, or I think it was last night, I tweeted out a video of some Russians trying to shoot down a drone with a shotgun, and the drone wasn't even moving; it was just hovering in place, with this guy just blasting it with a shotgun over and over again, and the drone dropped a grenade on him, and it didn't end well for the guy. Okay, so shotguns don't work, no matter how much people want them to. They don't work, and the Russians giving this training, I think, does boost morale and makes people feel like they can do things they can't do, and it is backfiring big time. Yeah, this video, you probably shouldn't show it. it's
okay. Well, this is the video. If you want to go and look at it, and you can go to Andrew.
Yeah,
it's too hot for YouTube.
No,
thank you. If you want to look at it, you can find this video on Andrew's Twitter.
Yeah, that's it's pretty graphic. It's a graphic depiction of why shotguns don't work.
Yeah, I just looked at it, and thank you for that. Oh, yeah. Well, now, I mean, you're going to have few lucky shots, and they're going to be replicated over and over again, right? But I think that could possibly boost morale a little bit. That's why they show these videos over and over again.
That guy, I mean, there's the one Russian soldier who he shot down like 3, 4, 5 FPV drones like back to back over the span of like 20 seconds, and that was amazing. Like it was genuinely amazing. Like that guy, I think if you had him do that, like if he had to try it 100 times, it might work once. But it was a miracle, and the Russians showed that video everywhere. And there's the other guy who like shot down a drone with a bag of potatoes, so that worked for him. But then every other guy I've seen throw stuff at a drone, it didn't work. There was the one famous video from Kherson. It was from Krinky, where the Russian picked up a shovel and threw it at a drone, and it missed the drone. Okay, throwing things at drones, it doesn't work. like most of the time, especially if it's a container of petrol. Usually doesn't work.
Yeah. There was also recently, I think it was a Wild Hornet video, or maybe not, maybe I'm mistaken, where a Russian throws his helmet at the drone. He
Yep.
actually hits the drone, but
Yeah, he
that
sure did.
didn't help him because
No.
it exploded like 1 meter away from him.
Yeah, then he just had exploded helmet in his face.
Yeah. And
And no
shrapnel all over him. So, I mean, that's not the first time I've seen someone throwing a helmet on drones. Never worked.
Yeah, I saw a guy. He took off a shoe and he threw it at the drone and then missed. He took off his other shoe and threw it at the drone and missed. And then he threw a third shoe. I don't know where the third shoe came from. And he picked up a fourth shoe. And I was just like, where are you finding these shoes? They all missed though. Man, that guy
Pickle
had a lot
jar,
of shoes.
though, that is a good anti-drone weapon.
Yeah. I mean, if you're being chased by an FPV drone, then I guess the best thing is trying to find some cover, and that's the only kind of successful thing I've seen, strategy I've seen, or tactic I've seen. But yeah, if you're in an open field, then you're basically dead. So.
And on that terrifying note, we should probably go to any questions in chat, Erlend.
Mostly comments. I actually didn't see any more questions than the ones theory. So, well, very well answered. Yeah. So actually, no questions.
Well, Andrew, I think that was pretty much your concluding point, or I don't want to cut you off if you had any final thoughts on all this.
That's it.
Yeah, I think it's terrifying. Drones are going to get us all. I'm scared, and yeah, I think we should all support Ukraine so that the drones don't come for us, because they will. And yeah, so keep supporting Ukraine, everyone. We'll see you all next week. Hope you guys got some good information, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Героям слава.